Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you show up.
Yeah, I mean, I got him at
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
Welcome back into Operation Domination. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater. Don't hope to win, be great and dominate. You can catch Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and check out our video content when you go to the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. It is Thursday. It's injury inquiry time, and that means I have the one and only Dr. Brian Scott of the Injured List podcast on today. Brian, how we doing, man?
Dan, we're doing well. Thanks for having me once again.
Of course, no injuries over here between the two of us. So that's the good news.
Well, actually, my knee's been acting up a little bit lately. I think I might have to use some good rest coming up from my adult hockey league, but that's coming up soon. We'll get through. We'll get through it. We'll get through the season. Carrying a questionable tag though the rest of the way. I hate to say
little tweak. It's not like a Ricky Pearsall tweak where it turns into 6 week PCL, right? Okay,
no,
all right.
No, it will not be like that.
Good. No, I'm glad. That's what we hope for here. Speaking of 49ers, let's dive right into this thing because I feel like I say this every week, but man, this list is just brutal. All right, so Brock Purdy. Let's just get this out the way. I'm going to do the same thing when we get to Pearsall later on. Toe injury. What's the update?
It's the same as we know. It's the same every week. I mean, I don't think we're going to see him again, period. Like, he's not doing much, limited stuff at practice. Again, they're being mad shady with their reporting about whether he's in or not. Now they're saying, oh, we got to wait till Friday to see how he does and yada, yada, yada. But every day that goes by each week is less and less likely that he's going to suit back up. I don't think we see him yet again. And, you know, the longer this drags on, the more likely it is that he actually does have a turf toe and that he may require some type of off-season surgery to address this. That's my professional opinion. We'll see how it plays out once the season's over and whether or not he even steps back on the field. But Kyle Shanahan's been making all kinds of weird comments about Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk, saying, well, I think he'll play this year, whatever that means. And it's just real it's kind of deceptive if you ask me. And I don't know what the point of it is because I don't see him playing at this point, either of those two guys, especially Ayuk. I mean, they haven't even opened up his practice window yet. And until they do that, there's no way for him to know if he's even ready to play. And when they do open up his practice window, until he's been activated, he's not even going to step on the field with the team. He's only going to be doing stuff on the side. Now, Brock Purdy has been doing that, but we haven't seen him do much else. So I don't really understand what's going on there in San Francisco. I know they're banged up. They've got a lot of players out. But when your starting quarterback, or at least your number one quarterback coming into the season has been dealing with this issue and they're trying to play through it, they don't put him on IR. A lot of it doesn't make sense from my perspective in this role that I have as a medical professional who works in sports medicine. So if it throws me for a loop, I can only imagine what it does to the casual fan and the fantasy football players alike.
Well, I mean, first of all, just this is just injury. You know, this is a par for the course when it comes to the 49ers, regardless. So if you want to say Shanahan, I don't know what the point of it is. We never know what the point of it is. He thinks he's getting some sort of game edge. This is nothing new with Kyle Shanahan going all the way back. I would say, and again, I'm not a medical professional like you are, but until Brock Purdy gets a full session at practice in, I don't think there's any chance of him playing. We're going to keep seeing him being limited, and wondering, and we're going to be right back to where we started. Shanahan on Thursday came out and said, on Friday, I will figure out for sure if he's cleared to play. Like every other week. Like, there's nothing different. Like, yes, he waits till Friday to see if Purdy can play. Look, unless Purdy does a full participation in practice, or Mac Jones finally gets hurt enough where he has to actually miss time, those are the only two things that I think will make Purdy play on an upcoming Sunday.
And to be clear, you and I have been saying that since we started doing these updates on him back in week 3 or whatever it was.
No, because Mac Jones looks like he's always just one breath away from being knocked out. But somehow he's battled through. I have to give him a lot of credit. Since we're just on the conversation of the 49ers, I don't want to have to talk about this later on. Ricky Pearsall, like the PCL thing, at this point, I'm just like, is it really just a PCL thing? Because this shouldn't be taking this long if it is.
Well, it makes me question the severity of the injury. I mean, if it is in fact a PCL injury, which is what they've been saying all along, then it makes me wonder that this is actually more severe in that his knee might be grossly unstable as a result of this injury. And again, this is one of those things where if that's the case, this may actually require surgical treatment. You can have an isolated PCL injury that can render the knee unstable. Now, it's not quite like having an isolated ACL injury. However, it is an important ligament in the knee when and if it causes the knee to be unstable, or if there are any other injuries associated with it, like meniscal injuries or bone contusions and things of that nature. So there has to be more to this story that we are not privy to. And I have to guess, again, based on my experience and my training, that there's some form of knee instability that's hampering his ability to get back on the field, and or some other structural injury to that knee that's, again, preventing him from being able to get through these treatments and step back on the practice field. And if that's the case, why they haven't put him on IR yet, I don't know. And could this be another situation where we see him have an off-season surgery to address this? We'll have to wait and see on that front. But, I mean, everything speaks to this being more significant than what they've told us.
It has to be. It absolutely has to be. He has, unlike Purdy, hasn't even practiced in a limited capacity. Right. And we're coming up on 6 weeks now. So, yeah, this is really concerning. With Pearsall, I'll just give you this. If you have an IR spot, I'm okay with continuing to stash him. But if you don't, like, we have no idea when he's coming back at this point. So don't keep holding on to him while we're getting through these bye weeks and you're trying to make your playoff runs. On the Purdy front, just to get back to the fantasy football aspect of this, they are playing the Rams this upcoming week. It is a tough matchup. However, these individual ball games here and these Rams 49er games in particular tend to go on the over. So I'm okay with streaming Mac Jones if you need to go in that direction. This was gnarly.
Hey, one more thing.
Oh,
let's not forget Pearsall got shot.
Yeah.
In an attempted mugging with a gun with a bullet coming out of it and made it back in like 3 weeks. And here we are now.
Less time to the PCL knee injury that we thought was a week-to-week injury.
I mean, if that doesn't tell you something, then nothing else will. I mean,
yeah, no, it's a fair point to make. It's 100% a fair point to make. All right, so Mac Jones streaming opportunity here. I still think against the Los Angeles Rams, but probably I still have him in my quarterback 15, so I'm still looking at other options if at all available to you. The next quarterback's injury, this was gnarly, man. So Jayden Daniels dislocated elbow. How do you break this one down?
Yeah, he did it the exact way we typically see it happen. He was basically putting his arm outstretched position to try and brace the fall as he was getting tackled. And basically like a hyperextension type of an injury to the elbow. We see it a lot in wrestling, to be honest. That's where I've seen it throughout my career the most. I've seen it numerous times. It is a lot worse looking than it actually is in some instances. In more higher impact injuries like car accidents, falls, things of that nature, we'll sometimes get what's called a terrible triad injury, which is multiple fractures along with the dislocation of the elbow. Those are really bad. Those often require surgical treatment, stabilization procedures to fix the fractures and reduce the elbow. In his case, it sounds like it was a pretty straightforward elbow dislocation. Usually with that, you'll get mostly soft tissue injuries, ligament injuries. But if it's a first-time injury and this is not something that renders the elbow unstable, then oftentimes you can treat it conservatively with splinting or bracing, limited range of motion initially, and then some therapy to get back to where you need to be. However, this takes multiple weeks, and this potentially could be season-ending depending on how his elbow responds to the rest and treatment going forward. So I wouldn't rule out that this is season-ending quite yet. I think he was supposed to have an MRI at some point this week. I have not seen reports about what that showed. I can tell you with a fact it's probably going to show ligament injuries. The question really for the MRI is to diagnose whether or not there was any type of fractures or potential loose fragments of cartilage or bone in the joint, which might cause an issue and require surgery. If all that turns out to be negative, then we could possibly see him back before the end of the season, believe it or not. Now, it's his non-throwing elbow, so that's huge. So that does help. He could play with a brace on that elbow, and it may not affect his ability to play quarterback at all. We've seen a lot of athletes come back and play from this injury with braces on. I've seen wrestlers come back quite quickly after these injuries. And in wrestling, you can't even wear a brace. A lot of times they're just taped. I'm not saying that's the best way to go, but it can be done. So there's still yet a lot of information yet to kind of dissect on this. But as bad as it looked, hopefully it's not as bad as it turns out to be. And like I said, I wouldn't close the door on him coming back. We should hopefully have an answer, if not by the end of this week, maybe next week. But this will be a multi-week absence regardless.
Yeah, so it was just, while the Commanders themselves have not ruled him out for the season, it felt like that's how they were approaching it. Just the vibes you're getting from Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury and that organization in general, it felt like, yeah, maybe it's not season-ending injury, but it probably is. And part of that has to do with the fact that the Commanders are not a playoff-bound team right now. So do you want to go the way of RG3, bring back the guy before he's ready and hurt him worse, or just say, hey, you know what? This season's lost. We're going to throw our hands up in the air. You don't get hurt anymore. We'll come back next year. I think that's part of it. Now that we are in week 10, we are officially over into the second half of the season. Decisions like that with injuries like this are going to start to be made. And I think this might be the first of that list that we are inevitably going to see at this point in the season when it comes to these type of injuries. We'll keep you guys updated week to week until we know more. In his absence, Marcus Mariota, who is averaging 16.9 fantasy points per game as a starter so far this season anyway, gets to take over. And that's been about a mid-level QB2. That's what you would expect. That's the type of streamer that he is. When he has a better matchup, I'm okay with having Marcus Mariota with a decent floor because of his rushing ability in your lineups. Just don't expect big ceilings from week to week unless he has a couple of rushing touchdowns, which is a variance that you're not necessarily trying to play for. That's all I have to say there. But for now, bye week time, mid-level QB2, he's a fine streaming option for you. Just don't get too excited. Well, Kyler Murray went on IR, and I think we talked about this last week, but if you want to give your official medical analysis on this first.
Yeah, I was surprised. We talked about this for several weeks. There was a week where he actually did come back, I think, and played through it or practiced up until the last minute, and then they ruled him out. So it seemed like it wasn't very serious. A lot of reports and video has been showing him on the sidelines and in practice doing stuff in a limited capacity, but looking actually pretty good. So we didn't think it was anything severe. You have to wonder if maybe they're elevating this to a more severe level because they're not happy with his play. That could potentially be part of it. Now, the
ding, ding, ding.
And I'm sure that's where you're going to get to. But from a medical standpoint, I mean, if this is a Liz Frank injury, then trying to play through it was the worst idea they could have had, a la Cam Newton several years ago before he retired, where he tried to do this, ended up having to have off-season surgery, was never quite the same after that. This is not, if that's what he was dealing with, you do not want to try to play through that. So they should have put him on IR right from the beginning. If it wasn't, and it could have been another type of midfoot sprain or forefoot sprain or something like that, then you potentially could get out there and play. But it never kind of felt like that because he was never in a boot. I don't think a lot of people even can go back to when he got injured and find the play on video. So it was kind of like this mysterious injury that popped up initially to begin with. And then we got mixed reports about his status and his availability and whether he's going to play. And then fast forward, even after a bye week, here we are. And now he goes on IR all of a sudden. So it's kind of a little bit shocking to, I think, most people in the medical profession and in the fantasy world.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm glad you cleared that part of it up. Maybe it was a Liz Frank injury, and it got worse, or they didn't know how bad it was to begin with. I'll put it to you this way, because I don't want to get crazy here without having some objective, analysis on your part as an expert, medical guy. But I just found it really, really strange when you're dealing with a guy, to your point, it didn't seem like was dealing with a serious injury. all of a sudden it's like they backlogged the original diagnosis. like that's what it felt like. Like you were week to week, and then now that we're in week 5 of the injury or week 4 of the injury, you went back and said, well, the initial diagnosis was always 4 to 8 weeks. I call BS. Because the initial diagnosis was 4 to 8 weeks to begin with. He would have been on IR day 1. They would not be waiting now to put him on IR.
I don't recall ever seeing that too in
no one did.
And statements I saw or I've researched when I've been looking up his injuries.
So for me, for full transparency, my day job is a truck driver. I wish this was my day job, not quite there yet. My day job is truck driver. We do things like calculate our logs and keep up with our paper on our hour logs. And then there's times where we make a mistake or maybe want to fib something, and then we backlog and try to change that to make it reflect what we want to reflect now. Cough, cough. This feels like what the Cardinals just did with this injury. It's exactly this. So if anybody's a truck driver, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But it feels like you just backlogged your hours essentially with this injury diagnosis.
Now, I think they have the option, and I could be wrong. I have to review the rule book on this, where they could technically backlog his stint on IR to a few weeks ago when he missed. But I think there might be a cutoff to when you can do that at some point. I don't think you can just randomly be like, oh, he missed 4 games, I'm going to back. Because what is that? That does you no good as far as roster activations.
Sure.
So, I mean, maybe that's why they did it. I don't know why they waited so long. I mean, like I said, from a medical standpoint, if this was something that was that significant, perhaps they should have done it a lot sooner. But my gut tells me that this is something that's not significant and that the doctors were probably giving him the green light. And this is where you get a picture where the organization or the coaching staff steps in and is like, you know what? He's hurt. Let's just have him rest. Let's see what we got in our backup QB. No, Kyler, it's okay. You're hurt. We know you're hurt. You just do your thing at practice. We'll kind of monitor you each week.
Anytime you're 100% healthy.
Exactly. And they probably kind of played that angle a little bit. And we're like, listen, we're not, I mean, if you think that doesn't go on in making some of these decisions with injuries, then you're mistaken, because what you have to remember is the medical staff, they're there to serve the players, but a lot of times they're at the mercy of the coaches and the organization. Ultimately, those decisions are going to be made based on what the organization needs from a standpoint of performance from their talent, who's also their asset. So the medical team can say certain things, but unless it's like a major injury, even them can get overruled, overstepped, ignored, or their recommendations not followed. And it happens a lot more than you probably realize.
The medical team is HR in real life. Think about your HR. They're there for you, but really when it boils down to it, they get overstepped and overridden by their actual bosses 24/7. That's essentially what the medical staff is. It shouldn't be that way because it's the medical staff, but that's essentially how it gets treated in certain situations. Like they're the HR team. So think about it in terms of that. So anyway, as this whole thing breaks down, and I thought it was really funny because I'm pretty sure it was Sleeper. If anybody is Sleeper out there, you saw they kind of did the Kyler Murray's going to IR and in parentheses put soft benching, which I thought was hysterical because I thought it was exactly what it was to begin with. And actually the truth, shout out to Sleeper for posting the truth about it. I talked about this yesterday on the show. So make sure you go back and listen or watch Operation Domination. We broke down exactly what it means to keep Jacoby Brissett as a starting quarterback right now. Trey McBride has 4 touchdowns in 3 games after being a guy for the last 2.5 years who hasn't been able to score touchdowns because Kyler Murray is a terrible quarterback, especially inside the red zone. Marvin Harrison has been largely a disappointment and suddenly now is consistently getting target and put into rhythm and putting up not big games yet. I think that will come, but very solid performances because he's a quarterback who's actually throwing him the ball where he needs to be able to make a play. Jacoby Brissett himself, fantasy-wise, look, I'm not starting him. There's not enough upside there. There's other options in the same tier I'd rather go with. But he makes Trey McBride the top 2 tight end you need him to be. He makes Marvin Harrison the top 24 wide receiver that you need him to be. And as a result, when we get Trey Benson back, we're not talking about him today because we know he's not coming back yet. But when we get Trey Benson back, then all of a sudden you have pieces on Arizona that you care about. And Jacoby Brissett makes that engine go because he actually runs the offense right now. That's the big thing to take away from a fantasy football standpoint. Let's go to our next quarterback. We got CJ Stroud. He's dealing with concussion. What's your update on him?
He's already been ruled out. I think today they made their announcement. He's still in concussion protocol and will not be cleared.
So he's gone, and Davis Mills comes in. The one nice thing about Davis Mills, I know where he's going with the football. He's targeting Nico Collins and he's targeting Dalton Schultz. So make of that what you will. Everybody else, kind of an afterthought. May not want to start anybody else in the Houston Texans. Let's go to running back. Saquon Barkley. He's coming off the bye. We were all wondering about that groin issue.
I think we'll see him back. He's expected to be available. He's been practicing this week. And, they did the right thing. The bye week helped them tremendously as well. It didn't sound like it was a serious injury when it first occurred. I think we'll see him back.
Okay, well, that's good news. Tank Bigsby, by the way, is the backup, in case you guys did not figure that part out already. A lot of people were pushing Will Shipley. It looked like maybe he was the handcuff week 1. They made the trade for Tank Bigsby 2 weeks later. He is definitely catapulted to be the number 2 running back on that team. So if you are looking for a handcuff, it is Tank Bigsby. What in the world is going on with Bucky Irving? We come out of a bye week. I feel like we know less than we did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, he's still not practicing. I don't expect to, again, this is one of those situations. There's been a few of these this year with multiple teams. Like, why isn't he on IR still? I don't know. I know the Bucs have had a lot of banged up players. Chris Godwin's another guy we haven't spoken about in a few weeks, but he's nowhere to be seen on the practice field still either. God only knows what's going on. Now, he did have 2 injuries he's dealing with, a foot and a shoulder. We don't even know which one's more significant. Initially, it started out, it was just one. Then somehow the other one got thrown in there as well. So it's been kind of a mixed bag of information coming out of Tampa Bay. But the one thing they've been clear about is that he's not practicing.
And that's the only thing they've been clear about. Because, again, we still don't really actually know what the foot and shoulder issue is. At least since you brought him up, Chris Godwin, at least there's an update there. It's not a good one, but the notification that I got just before we actually went on the show, really, is that he will not be expected to be back until late November, early December.
What's the point at that point? I mean, I don't even know what the point is. But
the only point would be is that if he's truly able to come back during that time frame, it would give you enough time to ramp him up where maybe he's a weapon for your playoffs, because Tampa Bay looks playoff bound. Not your fantasy football playoffs, but the NFL playoffs. So from a fantasy football standpoint, I'm going to treat this like the Ricky Pearsall situation. If you have the open IR spot on your team, fine. Stash them if you want to. But I'm not expecting a whole lot out of him. And if you need to make room, I'm okay with dropping him. Because even come late November, early December, let's say he does come back. He's not going to be anywhere close to himself. We saw that when he first tried to come back in those 2 weeks before he got hurt again. And we know he's at best the second option on that team behind Emeka Puka. If he's actually healthy, I'm okay with 2 options on the Tampa Bay Bucks. But if he's not, I think you can go other options other places right now, especially with a guy that I don't know for sure is going to even come back during that time frame either. On the Bucky Irving front, Raschaad White, Sean Tucker. Keep your eye on this. I've been trying to keep my eye on the cycle. I haven't been able to get a lot of information as of yet. But remember, right before the bye week, because Raschaad White failed on the goal line, Sean Tucker came in and took that and then kind of had that role for the rest of the game. And then it wasn't just the goal line work that Sean Tucker started to take over. It was a lot of the early down work where maybe the game right before the bye was showing us an idea that this could become a 50-50 split between Sean Tucker and Raschaad White in their respective roles. Now, we've heard this before and it hasn't quite panned out, but it does sound like more so than any other time that I can remember since Raschaad White's been on the Tampa Bay Bucks, that the coaching staff just feels a little bit fed up with his ineffectiveness and his inefficiencies. So I would not be surprised if Sean Tucker gets more run this week. I'm not saying going out and start him. I am saying if he's available in your leagues, go ahead and stash him. And keep your eye on what's going on in the news in Tampa Bay, because this could be a sneaky sleeper play if suddenly he becomes the starter by Sunday or after Sunday. All right, so we go to DeAndre Swift. Groin issue. He missed last week. What do you think happens to him this week?
We should see him back. He actually, I think, returned to full practice today, his first one since the injury designation, and it sounds like he's going to be available. So I think we will see him back. Keep in mind, groin injuries in the football are not usually as bad as sports like we see in hockey. Usually when they're bad is when we see them occur during like inclement weather, and there hasn't been a lot of games this season so far where there's been inclement weather. So if he did have a groin injury, same thing with Saquon Barkley, it's probably not that bad. I think we'll see him back.
Okay, well that's good to know. DeAndre Swift, even though it looks like he is going to be splitting time with Monungai, who came off a huge game. Grant you, it was Cincinnati, but he still came off of a huge game last week. And leading into that game was starting to inch towards 50-50 split anyway in snaps. But it hasn't hurt Swift because Swift is better when he gets to be efficient on less touches. So DeAndre Swift is a top 24 running back. And this week, because they're playing the Giants, Monungai's a top 24 running back too. Sorry, Brian, but I mean,
I know how it is.
Hey, it's like Cincinnati and the Giants. Those are like the two matchups that you want to have running backs against right now, no matter who you are. And I'll even take two of them too, as long as they're like playing efficiently. So yeah, sorry about that one, but we got to go that route. Aaron Jones, shoulder. How's he looking?
So he missed practice Wednesday, but then returned to limited session on Thursday. The head coaching staff basically said it doesn't look like this is going to be a major issue for him going forward. I think we should see him as well. It may take Friday's practice, though, before we get a real clear picture as to what his designation will be. But we should see him back. It sounds like it's nothing serious.
That's good news because Jordan Mason looks like the magic run has run out on him when he gets the opportunities to actually play here. So, like, look, it's really misleading when you look at his box score numbers because when Aaron Jones was out, Jordan Mason goes down in those games as the RB12 in points per game, which, like, oh, well, RB12, what's wrong with that? It's really, really good. It's boosted by Cincinnati, who, again, we say when you want to play running backs against, is boosted by his week 3 performance. You take that out, he's been an RB, low-end RB3, high-end RB4, even in the games without Aaron Jones. It's been really, really, really bad when he's not playing the Cincinnati Bengals, essentially. So Jordan Mason is, I don't even know if he's guaranteed a pivot spot to go to if Aaron Jones is out. So if you have Aaron Jones, you're looking for Aaron Jones, you want him back out there because even if you don't and you had Jordan Mason, I don't know if I want to be set with the dilemma of do I start him, do I not? Because honestly, even if he is the pure starter, his ceiling is just not very high right now. How's Kayshon Judkins doing coming off with the shoulder injury coming off the bye?
Yeah, similar situation here with Aaron Jones. It sounds like they're optimistic he's going to be back this weekend. He was practicing so far this week, and their head coach said that the shoulder should not be an issue for week 10. They've got confidence that he'll be ready, and I think we'll see him as well.
That's fantastic because they're going up against the Jets, who just traded away Quinton Williams. And they're already giving up 5 yards per carry to begin with, as it is. So this is a real juicy matchup here for Kayshon Judkins on Sunday. Rhamondre Stevenson, he missed last week with the toe issue. Do we have an update?
I don't think he's stepped back on the practice field as of today either. So it sounds like he's not going to be good to go just quite yet.
All right, so this one I got to talk about a little bit because the Travion Henderson thing for people is just they're losing their minds, and I get it, I understand. So last week, Travion Henderson got a decent amount of work, looked decent too, like it wasn't anything crazy, but was efficient for the first time this season. And then everybody was like, "Wow, we just watched Terrell Jennings steal our touchdown." I get it. It's hard when you drafted Henderson where you did, and you've been waiting for him to finally get his opportunity. And then he still wound up kind of splitting the touches with Terrell Jennings. And if you're sitting there saying to yourself, you're not alone. Many people don't know who the hell Terrell Jennings is. And then the guy comes in and scores a touchdown. Here's what I would say. Jennings, while the box score touches were close, Jennings only played 15 snaps to Travion Henderson's 55. It wasn't particularly close as far as who was on the field. Jennings happened to come on. It wasn't like he's the goal line back either. That wasn't what was happening. He happened to come on in that situation and score a touchdown when Henderson needed a breather. So I'm not reading too much into this. It is annoying. I don't trust Josh McDaniels to actually do the right thing when it comes to running back rotation. So there is that aspect that you have to take in consideration. I understand completely. but I am going to look at Travion Henderson at least as a high-end RB3 who should be in your flex spot. And with the 4 weeks on bye, you might not have a better option. And I'm okay playing him as a low-end RB2 in your matchups this week. It's Tampa Bay, so that's what makes it a little bit rough. Tampa Bay gives up a lot to running backs as far as the receiving game goes, but Henderson has not been worked in that aspect enough to really provide you with a concrete floor and a good matchup that provides for that. And they've been tough against running backs on the ground. So I'm not expecting a big ceiling here, but enough volume that he should be a playable asset this week if Rhamondre Stevenson does miss. Speaking of the Cincinnati Bengals, Samaje Perine, he gets the high ankle sprain. What do you think what's going on with here?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see him back for a couple weeks. I mean, we talk about high ankle sprains a lot on the show, and usually, those can require several weeks, sometimes even a stint on IR before the players are kind of back to normal and feeling good enough to step back on the field. They initially said when he went down with this injury, it'd probably be a couple weeks, and I think that'll be at least 2, probably closer to 4. So we haven't seen him do anything just yet this week.
They are on bye this week. And usually I don't talk about players who are on bye. But the reason I do bring this up now, this is kind of a big deal because Samaje Perine, kind of similar to what's going on with Monunga and DeAndre Swift, found himself the last few weeks in a 50-50 split essentially with Chase Brown. Now, since Joe Flacco has come, Brown has rebounded. The entire offense has rebounded. So this is why that becomes a big deal, because now if Perine coming out of the bye is going to be expected to miss a few weeks and it's a high ankle sprain, so we know how that can affect the player's production even when he comes back on the field. Chase Brown might go back to that crazy bell cow level work. In fact, he did the week right before the bye when Samaje Perine got knocked out early in that game. He was like 90% snap count. He might go back to that insane workload we saw him a season ago, this time last year, and be the top 5 running back the rest of the way as a result of that insane workload and a really good offense. They look like with Flacco, they're at least going to be a high-scoring offense, and now he might get that workload. I say that to say this. If you have any shot of buying low on Chase Brown, I don't know if he's still a buy low candidate really in most leagues at this point anyway, but this is your last chance to do it. It's a real nice schedule the rest of the season. You're coming up on your trade deadlines, and now Samaje Perine is hurt. So things are trending up for Chase Brown moving forward. Ollie Gordon, his ankle issue, what do you have here?
Yeah, so he returned to practice in a limited fashion today for sure, Thursday. I'm not sure if he made it back earlier in the week, but it sounds like he's ramping up his activity, and there is some optimism that he might be ready this week, although I think he's going to be probably a late decision, true game time decision. He's probably going to carry that questionable tag into Sunday, so I would keep a close eye on reports about what he's doing on Friday and potentially prior to the game.
No, we bring that one up too because everybody wants to know who's Devon Achane's handcuff, because we know Devon Achane is 150 pounds soaking wet. You always kind of worry about him getting injured at some point. Now, it hasn't happened to his credit, which is really impressive. But also, Ollie Gordon has been starting to get worked in a little bit more himself, where maybe in deeper leagues, we're talking about being a flex play. And if he was going to be hurt, does that mean Jalen Wright becomes the handcuff again? Well, it sounds like Ollie Gordon is going to be back on the field. Therefore, Jalen Wright is not the handcuff pick that maybe we thought he was going to be if Ollie Gordon were to miss time. Let's move into the wide receivers. So Puka Nacua, dealing with a ribs issue, didn't come back in the game last week. They seem to be downplaying this. What do you see on your end?
Well, they said they did scans in the locker room that day that he got hurt and everything was negative. So he's probably a little banged up, got some rib contusions, possibly some sprains, and that can be very painful and difficult to play through. He has been limited in practice to start the week. I do expect that he'll be available, however. We've seen him play through some similar injuries in the past, and we've seen him get hurt quite a bit, unfortunately. But when he's out there, he's a stud. He plays hard, and that's what happens. You get injuries a lot when you're playing hard and you're playing at a high level. So I think we'll see him. He could, again, be a true game time decision. If these ribs are a problem heading into the weekend game, there is a chance we might see some limited snap count or possibly limited use, depending on the outcome and how things unfold during the game. So keep that in mind, even if he does play. If they're up big or down bad, he might be pulled a lot faster than he would be if everything was good. So that's something to keep an eye out as well, even though players are sometimes suiting up and playing. The way the game unfolds might dictate their usage, which could be related to their injury.
Sure. And with Puka, man, it's just you love the way he plays. You don't want him to stop playing the way that he plays, but at the same time, the way he plays is going to get him killed eventually. And and when you got a guy that you spent first round draft capital on, and he's phenomenal every time he's out in the field, you do want him to find ways that can you take a little less of a beating? Can you find a way to do that just to stay on the field a little bit longer? That's all I'm really asking for here. But yeah, so look out for Puka Nacua. I do think he's going to wind up playing. It's a big divisional rivalry game with the 49ers and a battle for first place at that. AJ Brown, hamstring, coming off the bye. What we got on him?
Yeah, so this is a guy who knows how to play and not really get injured a
No,
lot.
he,
I mean,
he had to learn it though. Early in his
Right,
career,
exactly.
he dealt with soft tissue injuries a lot.
Exactly. And I was going to say that usually comes with experience and, being a seasoned vet. So I think his absence the last couple of weeks was more of a strategic move, knowing that they had the bye week. Now that they're coming out of the bye, I expect that we'll see him back. It didn't sound like it was a serious hamstring strain. He's had a couple weeks now to recover. I'm hoping we'll see him back because I need him to produce for me, and I think we will see him back.
I think we're going to see him back too. All wheels up, AJ Brown. I know it's been a wild, inconsistent roller coaster type of year. AJ Brown is AJ Brown. And if anything, the last couple of weeks have shown the Eagles seem to be getting back to their downfield passing attack. We didn't see them do the first 6 weeks of the season. So that has to make you feel a little bit better there. And it's a big Monday night matchup with the Green Bay Packers. Garrett Wilson, is he finally going to come back with his knee issue?
Yeah, so I've been saying that they were going to wait till after their bye, and then all these, rumors swirling around about him possibly getting traded, then Quinn Williams getting shipped out, Sauce Gardner getting shipped out. Now you got to wonder what's his motivation to even step back on the field from an injury. From an injury
He's got a big one now.
From an injury standpoint, I think he's ready. I think he's had enough time. They never really quite said exactly what the injury was. I think they called it like a hyperextension type injury. Never quite said though. Or I think he did have an MRI that did not show any major structural damage. So I was calling it a knee sprain all along, which is probably what it was. And I think we'll see him back. He's had several weeks now to recover, and we should see him.
Yeah, so what's interesting here is that people see the Cleveland Browns on the schedule and they start to panic a little bit because they have an elite defense. But really, against the wide receivers, they've been a nice matchup. They've given up 23rd most points to the wide receiver position. Now, here's the flip side of that. They're also like one of the best. I should take that back. They are the best pressure team and sack team in the NFL. And Justin Fields is the Jets quarterback. So this kind of lies the issue. When Justin Fields has gotten pressure this season, we've seen not one, but 2 games where the guy didn't even throw for 100 yards. So it doesn't really matter if a defense is willing to give up points to the wide receiver. If the quarterback can't even get to 100 yards passing, there's only so much the wide receiver gets to do. Having said all that, Garrett Wilson, even in his first week back, Brian, to your point, enough time to recover. Not really worried about him not being able to perform at Garrett Wilson peak level. It's just going to be a matter of does he get the opportunity to do so from his own teammates or not. He's still going to be a top 24 wide receiver play for me this week. Yes, the quarterback does give it a low floor variance, unfortunately, but at the end of the day, he's still Garrett Wilson, and there's still just one guy to go to with the football when they're dropping down to pass it. So I'm sticking with Garrett Wilson as a top 24 option in his week back this week.
He was limited in practice so far, so keep an eye on his status still going forward. Friday will determine him.
That's absolutely fair. I'm just giving it like a given. You're right. He was limited in practice, so there's still some question there maybe. Brian Thomas, ankle issue. What's up?
So some reports have said now he's got a high ankle sprain. Some reports earlier said it was a low-grade high ankle sprain or a low ankle sprain. A little bit confusing there. He didn't practice immediately after the injury. I think he's still carrying a questionable tag. I'm not sure if he's even stepped back on the field yet this week. I'm not so sure we're going to see him back quite yet.
What the hell is a low-grade high ankle sprain?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, yes, you can have a low-grade high ankle sprain. You can have a low-grade any sprain. The issue is it's a high ankle sprain. And as we've spoken about before, those notoriously take longer to get better. And you're talking about different ligaments that affect the ankle joint in different ways. And that's not one that you particularly want to play through, even if it's a low-grade one. So that's why it usually requires multiple weeks. So even a low-grade one, I don't necessarily care whether it's a low-grade, a moderate one, or a high-grade. If high ankle sprains take a while to recover from, and they're much generally speaking, much more significant because of the anatomy that's involved. So I'd be shocked if he's available. I don't think we'll see him. I don't think he's done much for anything this week yet. It's probably going to be it could be multiple week absence.
Well, and that's what I think was driving me crazy the most is because people were coming out when the injury first happened and trying to act like it was a low ankle sprain. We're like, no, you told me it was a high ankle sprain. You can't then tell me he's not even going to miss time. Like they're trying to act like it wasn't even given he missed this week. By the way, no, he has not been at practice all week long. I don't expect to see him this week coming up. The Jaguars made a move for Jacoby Myers. Fantastic. Myers is not going to be enthralled to the playbook week 1. He's going to be out there. They not only they made the move for him, but also by necessity, because I do think Brian Thomas Jr. misses. But he's not going to be totally enthralled in the playbook. He's not going to have a full. I'd be surprised if he had a full snap count. That will come eventually. Parker Washington comes in. I do think in the box score on Sunday, Parker Washington will have the most targets of the pass catchers of the Jaguars. I don't know how much it's going to matter. So Parker Washington, to me, is coming in that low-end wide receiver 3, high-end wide receiver 4 tier based purely on volume. They get a tough match against the Houston Texans. Even good wide receivers have not put up points against the Houston Texans this year. It's been rough. They've been one of the top defenses in the NFL, and a defense that in fantasy football you really do not want to face, whether it's a wide receiver or a running back, period. It's been crazy how they just zapped that all away from good players so far this season. So Parker Washington in a average to good matchup would be a sneaky volume mid-level wide receiver 3 play. Add in the Houston Texans, add in Jacoby Myers, and I don't know how much I really want to play him this week unless I'm in total desperation mode. That's what I'm trying to lay out for you guys on that one. Terry McLaurin, quad.
Yeah. This is going to turn out to be probably a multi-week absence yet again. I think he came back too soon. We talked about it on the show. There was video of him doing stuff at practice, and I think I commented that he looked like he was limping still, and yet there he was back out there. Of course, it got re-aggravated, and now he's going to probably miss several weeks. I don't think we'll see him back anytime soon. We'll have to keep this is purely going to be a week-to-week thing. But at least a few weeks probably.
I don't think we see him back this season. Again, this goes back to the Jay and Daniels thing. This is not a playoff team. Yeah. You've already committed to Terry McLaurin. It's a lost year. I don't think we see him back again this season, period. If you have Terry McLaurin, again, IR spot, great. If not, I think you can move on from him. I don't think we see him back. And even if we do, I don't know what you're getting out of him at this point. Calvin Ridley, is there any update on his hamstring?
As far as I know, he hasn't stepped back on the field to practice yet this week, so I don't think we're going to see him back anytime soon either.
Yeah, and in his absence, Chimere Dike or DK, however you want to say it, I've heard both ways. I'm going to go with DK. Has been really the guy that you want. Like I know early in the season, Leak Aomanor was the guy who's actually playing more often, but Chimere DK, or I keep saying it wrong. Yes, DK. So I keep trying to say it that way.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, sure. He's been the guy who's been able to make big plays, and he's the guy who's been able to play the slot. So those things combined have made it so that he's actually now catapulted in front as the most consistent target earner to this point. That can all change. It's Tennessee. They're awful. Cam Ward's not playing well. The whole thing's a disarray. But being that he's playing the slot and he can stretch the seam, he just makes himself more readily available more quickly for Cam Ward, who's completely and utterly under duress every time he goes to drop back and pass because that offensive line is absolutely horrible. Again, I'm talking more in terms of a wide receiver 4-tier type player that in deeper leagues you want to take a shot on certain situations, fine. But that is an option as long as Calvin really continues to miss, that we're going to see Chimere Dike be able to make more plays. We talked about Ricky Pearson, Chris Godwin already. Kayshon Boutte, hamstring injuries. Is there an update on him?
So yeah, he was listed as a did not practice on Thursday. I don't think we're going to see him this week. Again, this could be several week absence depending on the severity, but it probably going to be a week-to-week analysis and breakdown of his injury as going forward.
So in his absence, the Patriots rotation might as well go right there with the Packers rotation at the wide receiver position, where everyone's getting a ridiculous amount of snaps. Everyone's getting a super spreader type of targets. Throw the Bills in that conversation too. It makes the whole thing maddening. But they have a good quarterback. They have a decent passing offense. So you want pieces of it and to figure out what you can count on when, because you know somebody's going to go off. You're just trying to figure out who and when to play that person. With Boutte out, all right, Kyle Williams, who we haven't heard from at all, stepped in and actually took over and pretty much became the treadmill player, but he took over and played a bunch of snaps on the perimeter of the outside. Weird. Pop Douglas, who I know everybody got swept away because he had the 4-catch, 100-yard performance, he played 15 snaps. He was barely on the field. He just happened to produce when he got the opportunity to do so. Maybe that leads to more snaps, sure. But I want to make sure we're illustrating the point here that as far as the playing time went, it was Stefon Diggs had a big boost, which of all the wide receivers, that's the one I'm going to trust the most in my fantasy football lineup this week against Tampa Bay, because he did get a playing time boost, and he's been the one who's been more consistent with targets throughout the year. Kyle Williams got a playing time boost. Mac Hollins seems to be out of the rotation. Pop Douglas, who is the most prolific wide receiver, hardly got on the field. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. Stefon Diggs is hovering around my wide receiver 24 area. Again, I don't trust the target, even with Kayshon Boutte out, I don't necessarily trust the target consolidation to get the volume you necessarily want. But he has had a touchdown the last 2 weeks in a row. He is the wide receiver in that group that I trust the most to be on the field with a combination of opportunity. So that's how we kind of break that whole thing down. Cooper Kupp, heel and hamstring. What do you got here?
I think we'll see him. He was listed as a limited participant in practice this week, and it sounds like he's probably going to ramp it up toward the end of the week. Again, this is a guy who's been injured throughout his career. He's had some major season-ending injuries and also a lot of minor bumps and bruises. He's probably just playing it safe as his team. I think we will see him.
Don't play him in fantasy-wise. They just traded for Rashid Shaheed, too, on top of it. So I can tell you right now, Shaheed and JSN, they're going to be the guys out there in 2 receiver sets, and Seattle runs a lot of 2 receiver sets. The bummer thing about this is that if Cooper Kupp comes back, because they paid him what they paid him in their playoff run, they're winning ball games. When they go to 3 receiver sets, I would not be surprised at all if Cooper Kupp's the one who's out there, because Torrey Horton, who's been a nice little play, rookie wide receiver, has been coming on strong, I think just kind of gets bumped out to the side just because Cooper Kupp has the name of Cooper Kupp in the contract that he has, which I think is a real shame, because at this point in his career, I'd rather see what Torrey Horton has than Kupp. But that is the fallout, if you will, of them gaining Rashid Shaheed at the trade deadline. Matthew Golden, shoulder, anything up here?
So they're saying he's day-to-day. Again, doesn't sound like it was anything serious. I think he might have actually had scans earlier in the week that didn't show any significant damage. So trending towards playing, I think it's going to be probably carrying a questionable tag into the weekend. But if he's able to get on the field to do a lot more on Friday, that he should be good to go.
If you have Matthew Golden, I'm dropping him. In 12-man or less leagues, I'm dropping him. Jaden Reed is a couple weeks away probably of making his way back. Even with the Tucker Kraft injury, which we're going to talk about in a second, even with that going on, he was still a non-factor in this rotation. Christian Watson's coming on stronger. Romeo Doubs has his role. Reed will be back soon, and everything else is just a mess. I don't know why they'd bother drafting this kid in the first round if they have no intention of actually using him the way that you're supposed to utilize him, but that's what we have with the Green Bay Packers as of now. So Matthew Golden, not a play for me in fantasy football unless you're talking about a real deep league. Luther Burden, is he coming back from his concussion?
So it sounds like he has already logged a full practice and been cleared from the protocol. So I think we will see him. I think he's actually officially been cleared too. So if not, then that should happen any minute now or any day now.
He doesn't play a big role, but people are getting excited right now about Colson Loveland. He does take away some from that area. DJ Moore was starting to get more of a floor as far as his volume goes. He takes away from that area just with the snaps that he plays. It kind of eats into those areas of the field. Something to watch out for with the Bears. I'm still waiting to see a concrete idea of who gets utilized on a consistent basis from here on out. Remember, the Bears are trying to play for a wild card spot, so we'll get interesting fast. I just mentioned Luke McCaffrey here because it was brutal.
Yeah, clavicle fracture. He'll be out, headed to IR. think he's having surgery. Not sure whether he is or he isn't. It's a season-ending injury at this stage. 6 to 8 weeks for those to fully heal, even if they're surgically repaired. Healing process doesn't necessarily get expedited. It just gets more secured. So unfortunately, bad timing. This probably will cost him the season, although depending on how they do and depending on the nature of the injury, it could be a little faster, but typically we're looking at minimum 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's just you talk about bad timing, not just because it's the second half of the season and might keep him out for the rest of the year, but also he was starting to finally come on behind Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel as that third wide receiver. Like there was some back and forth between him and Jalen Lane, who was going to kind of overtake that. And each week it seemed like it was this player, then it was this player, there was this player. And then finally it looked like the last couple of weeks it had started to lean towards McCaffrey's way, especially with him making plays with the opportunities that he was starting to get to. And then this winds up happening, unfortunately. All right, so let's talk about that Tucker Kraft ACL injury. What was the diagnosis ACL part of it? Do you know?
Yeah, I think he might have additional damage to some of the other structures in the knee. So, I mean, the ACL obviously being the most important part of that injury, and it looked pretty obvious on the film. It was your typical contact ACL injury, not your non-contact ACL injury. The problem with those is those typically carry more significant associated structural injuries with them. Those are usually when you see the more commonly termed unhappy triad, where you'll get an ACL, you'll partially sprain or tear the MCL, and then you'll usually get the meniscus on the outer part of the knee. Those are typically more commonly seen with the contact type injuries, unfortunately, where the foot is planted and fixed in the ground and you either get hit or rolled up on it, which causes the knee to go into a very precarious position while being twisted. And it, by all means, that's what it looked like on the video replay of him getting injured. He got, it looked like the defensive player was coming in to make a tackle and got basically shoved into his knee in an awkward position. So, again, with ACL injuries, you're looking at 9 to 12 months minimum, sometime somewhere within that window. Could be longer. We've seen players go as much as 18 months before they're back playing football and doing football activities, and that could be the case with him. It really depends on what they have to do from a surgical standpoint. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, really unfortunate there. Because he was on his way to being the tight end one of the year. Like Tucker Kraft looked like he was ready to become George Kittle. That's what it looked like. He looked like he was ready to take that step to be that type of guy. And he gets the ACL injury here. So what happens in the aftermath? If you had Tucker Kraft, you're looking at tight ends. It's already been brutal. It's been picked over because you're constantly streaming at the position anyway. And now you're stuck where you thought you had a position that was solidified and no longer do. Musgrave was the guy who clearly filled in for Kraft. So after he gets injured, he outsnaps Fitzpatrick 30-18. He had 20 routes run to 7 routes run. Remember, Musgrave was drafted ahead of Tucker Kraft. He is a more athletic version when healthy. His problem has been that he has not been able to stay healthy throughout his career. And whenever he was given the opportunity, something would pop up. Tucker Kraft came in, Kraft would play well, and then Musgrave became the backup before too long. I am curious because of how athletic Musgrave is, and because he's been in the system long enough, if he can stay healthy, I am really curious to see what he can do. Because this is not a situation where I think all of it just leaves the Kraft position and goes to the wide receivers. The tight end in Matt LaFleur's offense is pivotal to be involved. So if Musgrave is able to stay healthy with his athletic ability and take advantage of what inevitably will be some design looks to the tight end position because of LaFleur's offense is designed to do that, I think Musgrave could be a real dart throw and a real savior for you if you had Tucker Kraft. I would definitely at least stash him. I'm not saying definitively to play him this week. I have him as my top 18 tight end, but not necessarily a must start. But I do think he's somebody you need to roster and see how this plays out to get confirmation. But I think you got a real shot that Musgrave could produce at a much higher than expected level. All right, Cole Kmet, concussion issues, what I had him listed for. What's your update on him?
He practiced fully today. It sounds like he's going to be cleared out of the protocol. Now, keep in mind, you can practice in full, but still not be cleared That just tells us that he's one step closer. You still have to be cleared from an independent neurologist. So it sounds like that's probably going to happen by Friday, and it can happen almost up until game time, to be honest with you. We've seen that happen before. But good news there. It sounds like he's going to make it through the protocol and be cleared to play, and has gotten through a full session today.
Excellent. Good to hear. Always happy to hear a player get healthy. Not always from fantasy football, though. So here's the issue with this. Colson Loveland, 2 weeks with Kmet banged up, essentially, gets to play a full-time role. And last week, we got a taste of what that could actually look like. And the reason why the Bears took him with a top 10 pick in the NFL draft to begin with. He was over 100 yards with 2 touchdowns and 7 targets. Don't turn him into Dalton Kincaid. Don't do what the Bills did. Do not make this guy your part-time receiving threat at the position because you want the other tight end to block and deprive yourself of a weapon that needs to be on the field more often than not. Don't do it. I'm begging you, don't do it. And that's what we're worried about for fantasy football purposes. I still have Colson Loveland. In a week, we have 4 teams on bye inside my top 12. I'm going to start him as a low-end tight end 1. But I am telling you right now, he falls in that same category as Dalton Kincaid until we see the Bears play him a full plethora of snaps, even when Cole Kmet is healthy. Maybe that happens this week. But until we see that definitively, just know there's an extremely wide variance. If he takes over, even with Cole Kmet out there, and plays a full set of snaps and a full set of routes, Colson Loveland becomes a top 6 tight end the rest of the way. That's why this is so important, this game, to see how this usage breaks down. So we'll have to wait and see. Brian, as always, man, love having you on. Thank you so much for the breakdown. Where can people follow you at, and what do you got going on next?
Yeah, so you can follow me on social media. Usually I'm on X at Injured List Pod, as listed below here. I've got my podcast, the Injured List Podcast, which you can see the logo up above. And on Tuesdays, I've been putting out kind of like a recap of the weekend's injuries, along with a preview of what's to come later in the week. And then, tune in here. You can get the closer to Sunday updates and Thursday night updates. And then TSS Fantasy, Friday nights and Sundays at That Sports Podcast Network, of which we belong as a member and owner. You'll find some various content over there as well. But yeah, my Tuesday injury podcast episode has been gaining some popularity, so I'm proud of that. And I think it, for fantasy purposes, man, it gives you a jump start on the week. It gives you a little bit of an advantage. You'll get a little bit of inside information and my take on some guys that are rolling off the stretchers and stuff on Sunday. So you can make a quick decision and keep an eye out about what to do and watch your rosters and go from there. So I'm proud of that segment. I've been doing it. It's a quick one, usually in no more than 10, 15 minutes. And I hit on some of the new players that are entering the injury watch list or the injured list, and go from there.
Excellent stuff. Always love having you on. Again, that's Dr. Brian Scott at the Injured List Podcast. Make sure you download, subscribe. Make sure you download, subscribe to this show, Operation Domination, on your favorite podcast app, and check out the video content we have on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader. I'll be back tomorrow with our best bets for Week 10 with Chaz Filardi of Sports Betting Weekly. So make sure you tune into that, and I'll see you guys later.